Welcome back. Season 9, Episode 21, Daring Doubt. Continuing our arc episode trend, this is an episode in which we conclude the Daring Do arc. Which is, yeah, that's interesting. Not sure what to make of that, honestly. I actually forgot to update the counter on the HUD here, forgive me. Updated the local counter. There we go. Make sure I updated that. Yep, make sure I updated Yep. Yep, okay, cool. So, this episode sucked. Alright, now that we got that out of the way. Well, I do actually have something to say about this episode, but I want to save it for later because it doesn't show up until, like, the last 2 minutes of the episode. I do love watching people gush about shared enthusiasm. I love that in real life. I mean, isn't that literally what we're all here for? While you watch me and my stupid bald self as I play video games and just kind of gush about them. Right? Anyways, shared enthusiasm. Something I'm big at. So it's nice seeing Fluttershy and Rainbow go, yay, woo. And then she brings up a book that Rainbow hasn't heard of, which Rainbow naturally gets very defensive about. After all, Achy Yearling sends her a copy every now and again, which, knowing Rainbow, she totally holds on to, even though she could probably get that sold for, a lot of money. But anyways. But there's this new book, written by Groom QQ Martingale. So, it's apparently written from Caballeron's perspective. Okay, no, that's a really cool idea, which I'm now going to pause for a moment to talk about. Fiction doesn't do this very often. Perhaps for a good reason, perhaps for bad. George R.R. Martin, Imperial Star Destroyer. So, let me give you an example of a hypothetical. Imagine if there was a book, probably just one book that came out, that was the Harry Potter series from the perspective of Voldemort. Or Snape would actually qualify as well. Maybe an entire story arc or a movie or whatever, which is entirely from the perspective of Palpatine, to use another example. And yeah, I agree, that would be neat. His disguise is totally G.R.R. Martin. Gurm, as some people like to say. And the problem here... Oh, I agree with that, Rascor. But the problem here is this is a great idea that they never do, and I'm not sure why. Have you noticed that? Even the authors don't ever try to do this kind of a story idea. Now, there are some very rare occasions where they try to do this. The Plan from Battlestar Galactica is a pretty good example of trying to show the other side of the story. It's just the plan kind of sucked. But, yeah, he needs to frickin' finish it. I will admit it's harder to write. So let's explain that a little bit. There are 3 things you could do when doing a differing perspective story like that, especially set during the same story. You can have it reinforce the existing points. You can have it challenge the existing points, perspective, changing context, etc. Or you can flesh it out. To explain what I mean by that a little bit, let me use a personal example. I myself have actually mentally written out a bit of what Kefka is doing across Final Fantasy VI. Because Kefka is the main character of FF6, and he's on the camera quite a bit. But every time he's off the camera, I find myself thinking and wondering what arc he's doing, what path he's doing, and why throughout the world and throughout the story. So there's obviously a lot you can do with that to add to and flesh out any given story. That's challenging, because if you do it a little bit too or a little bit too then some people are like, well, what's the point? All it is more of the same story. Some people are into that, and some people are not, for example. So that's obviously going to diminish your viewer size, and therefore you're going to make less money off of it. And so now you can see why less people do it. Personally, I think it's a fascinating idea, because if nothing else, it would be cool to see, for example, maybe one movie. You know how there's 7 trillion things going through Star Wars right now? If, for whatever reason, they actually reached out to me and said, Lore, we want you to pitch a movie, I would pitch Darth Vader. And it would be a movie set starting sometime a little bit after Episode 3, leading up to and through Episode 6. And it would be those sequences of events from his perspective. And we get to see his life and his existence and his development and his arc as we go through that. And his interactions with Palpatine, his interactions with the Imperials around him, and how he ended up developing with regards to the Alliance, and then the discovery of his son, how that rejuvenates his life, how it completely changed his perspective, blah, blah, blah. If you're paying attention, they actually did do this. There's a comic book series called Darth Vader, which cover this exact same concept. So it's not like this is an unknown concept. It's just, it's really rare. And again, because they usually don't sell as well. So it's a cool concept. I just wanted to mention that. And yeah, I would end it at the end of episode 6. I would end it with him in the bay with Luke. Like, there's maybe at the actual funeral pyre, but you get the point. I have to think about the specifics, which would make a better thing, but you get the idea. So yeah, cool concept, and I would love to see more of this kind of thing in fiction. And unfortunately, we're probably never going to get any more of it. So, anyways, so Rainbow gets defensive about the series. Yeah, I don't really do that anymore, but I still have that problem. You know what that's like, right? I know some people know what that's like, and I'm sure most of the internet knows what that's like, where people tend to get a little bit too defensive. Not when someone says something is crap or when something is bad, but just when people tend to... They don't like any kind of perceived slander to be said about something that they care about. Because, again, we tend to, you know, attach a personal identity to things and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it is worth noting that Rainbow Dash is literally friends with A.K. Yearling, a.k.a. Daring Do, so it makes a degree of sense that she's getting a bit personal about it. It's just interesting to see her go through that, because she, at every point in the line, is completely unwilling to even consider that anything's going on until they get the Truth Amulet. That's the first time that she's even willing to acknowledge the possibility elsewise. So, moving forwards. So then we get to a bunch of bad fans who are there to badmouth A.K. Yearling, because apparently all they listen to is Twitter. And Rainbow immediately recognizes Caballeron immediately, naturally. And of course she got the color of the flowers wrong! And if she got the colors of the flowers wrong, how many other things might she have gotten wrong? That's one of those arguments. I mean, it is the Wookiee defense. It is. I think there's a logical fallacy that this is called other than the Wookiee defense. But the problem here is that this is one of the most difficult arguments to argue against. Because it's so logical. Well, you lied about one thing, therefore what else are you lying about? I can tell you I'm Elvis right now, and that is a lie. But that doesn't make anything else I've said ever a lie. And that's the problem. It is actually a fallacy. It is a logical fallacy. But it's such an effective one. And it's exactly what Caballeron is using here. Well, you're lying about this, or you're wrong about this, therefore, and yeah, exactly. Did you really kick that puppy? Just the one time! It was on accident. So, Caballeron gives his side of the scenes, and it's so slanted. I've talked about slanting before. Usually from an out-of-character perspective, but people in the universe do this too. Don't you sell your things? Only because I had to. Slanting, it's worth noting, isn't just straight-up lying. Slanting is portraying a truth with a certain light on it. You know, I'm trying to think of a made-up example here. Lord, did you have Chipotle for breakfast? Yes, but I mean, I didn't even really like it that much, and it was okay, I guess. I don't really support Chipotle, you know? It was food, and I wanted to try out the new chicken, and I'm just kind of slanting it a little bit to try and make it seem less bad. And you'll notice he does the opposite too. He slants to make her worse, and he slants to make himself better. Very, very, very common thing that most people do, including me. I've kind of gotten better about this in the last, 7 years, but yeah, slanting. Actually, yeah, Ross, to be blunt. Which the thing is, slanting can be good or bad writing depending. A character slanting something like Caballeron, that makes sense. The episode being slanted to make Caballeron right, that would be bad writing, and I want you to remember that for later. So, anyways, so. Caballeron gives his thing, blah, 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 and he's like, you know what, I'm going to recruit you. Awesome. Now, this is when I really have to mention that Rainbow is very, very stonewalling, although I love the fact that A.K. Yearling is like, Whoosha, reveal. And right in front of the kid, and the kid's just like, oh, this is so cool. It was just a neat moment I have to comment on. Because it was just nice to see, right? Could you imagine for just picture this? Picture an author or a writer, or I guess it's about the same things, or a musician or someone that you really like, and they just turn into Superman right in front of you. Like, it's like, oh my god. Anyways, it's a bad analogy, but I kind of gelled with that. And yeah, exactly, Darth Medoro. Do I think Fluttershy is too naive here? No. But I admit that's more headcanon than on camera. It is reasonable and acceptable, in my opinion, to presume that Fluttershy is just kind of going along with things to figure out the other side of things. Something she does with Awizodle at the very end, too, you're noticing. So she's like, all right, we're going to go and try to figure... Yeah, exactly. She knew something was up, but she was willing to give them a chance. She flat out says to Rainbow, I'm going to go get his side of the story, so I'm going along with his next adventure. Right? And I don't think she... Yeah, exactly. It's pretty much the exact same thing she pulled with Discord, way back in season 2 or 3 or whatever that was. In other words, of course they're doing this, but I'm still going to be kind, and I'm still going to be nice, and give them the benefit of the doubt, and win them over with kindness, which it's worth noting she actually does. So... And yeah, do you want to be an adventurer? And yeah, she was probably excited about the concept. Of course she is. She's kind of the nature person, which, did you notice, by the way, of all the superpowers of the main 6... hers would be extremely useful in a jungle adventure, and was. Oh yeah, Fluttershy is a mean bard. Oh my gosh. Anyways, so they go out into the fragile jungle ecosystem. She's like, don't worry, you know, I brought things. I love Caballero saying, you're willing to share? Yeah. I mean, that's part of the fun, right? Ooh, yeah. And then totally Awizodle's cats. I mean, come on, you think we wouldn't recognize us? Jump out. And so she's like, hey, what's up? And of course, duh, Fluttershy speaks to animals. I've already kind of emphasized this, so it's very logical that she's willing to talk them through this. And I was actually thinking about this. This is one of the reasons Aquaman is so damn terrifying. If you think about it. I mean, I know. There was the joke back in the 80s that Aquaman was pathetic and terrible, but no, Aquaman has pretty widely been recognized as being high tier for a reason. And so imagine the ability to talk to any animal. And, yeah. Either way, yeah, I wasn't even going to mention that part, Raspar. Because the Aquaman has other things as part of his kit, other than just talk to fish. So they go to find the Truth Talisman, which of course has the power to make them tell the truth, and you see where this is going. But it's also made of solid gold. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Meanwhile, Fluttershy is wholesoming the whole criminal group, which... Yeah, I found myself thinking, what other, like, not actually evil groups do you think Fluttershy will be able to do a good job with? My mind immediately jumped to Bowser over in the Mario RPG verse, but another one would be like Team Rocket over in Pokemon, for example. Because in most continuities, Giovanni is not actually evil, for example. I know there are some where he is. And so, yeah, I can just see that, right? Cerberus? I don't know about Cerberus, because, yeah, the whole point is it has to be not actually evil. And Cerberus, I mean, there are people in Cerberus who aren't actually evil. I agree with that. Not sure if how that would go with her and the Elusive Man, for example. Because I don't think she could turn the Elusive Man. I know that sounds awful. I think it'd be more likely that the Elusive Man would use her to great effect. Like, let me put it to you this way. The Elusive Man would have assigned Fluttershy to Shepard's team in Mass Effect 2. Think about that. And there would be no stare needed because he would never give her any reason to use the stare on him, Ross. He would, quite openly and honestly, say, you will be very useful here in helping these people work together and convincing them to be part of a better thing. And he would absolutely assign her in a way that she would really be able to make that particular cell, the cell with Shepard, work substantially better and be better friends and blah, blah, blah. And it would actually help the mission. And that's why the Elusive Man is such an awesome villain, by the way. Because he wouldn't even be doing that from a villainous perspective. He wouldn't be doing that for evil. Evil might come of that. But yeah, Tim manipulates most often by telling the truth. And he's really good at it. Anyways. So, this is when we encounter flighters. God, I hate flighters so much. It's okay. We only have a brief cameo of them. And again, we see how useful she is in this scenario. And then we see Aizodal. So we Indiana Jones it up for a bit, probably for the last time in the whole show. She even grabs the hat. There we go. So then they go through the horrible maze of unmitigated doom, but they do something smart from a director writing perspective. They skip the maze. Did you catch that? Okay, we're in the maze. And then we're out of the maze. And that's good, because the maze isn't the point of the episode, really. It has no real significance to the episode. What matters is the big moment at the end. So we just skip right to the end. And what I like about this is Caballero is still very clearly, a villain. He's still clearly trying to manipulate her and blah, blah, blah. And yet, when she is in trouble, his entire team, and he included, band together to help Fluttershy. And I wrote down in my notes, you notice how they honestly, legitimately like her and are willing to work with and care about her. And then, Amulet, and then we find out that, yes, that's actually the truth. That's not just me reading into it. And yeah, I love how the Mooks just are immediately on top of saving her. That's just awesome, the way they do that. Because, of course, they are, right? Because of the aforementioned Fluttershy effect. Fluttershy is like a Pokemon, basically. So, and yeah, she helped each one of them individually, too. So, this is when, everyone rushes in, and he's wearing the Truth Talisman, and yeah, you see where this is going. As expected, he is telling the truth. I was actually doing this just for money, but, I actually kind of like her. She's cool. Then Aizodal shows up. Now, I'm going to go and admit that this is where I was wrong. Because what I see is like, aha, this is the overall approach. We're going to have an understanding and growth between Daring Do and Caballero. Caballero and his crew are going to be better. Daring Do is going to be a little bit more cautious about what she does, and the two groups are going to unify, and it'll be all cool, because they are now in the face of a greater, deadlier threat, Aizodal, who is still cackling and maniacal and trying to kill them. So then we have the team up against the gargoyles. Catgoyles? Ponygoyles? Naturally, they're weak to light, which is a really stupid weakness to have. There's a brief moment where Caballeron's got the thing on and he says something, he's like, cannot lie. I find myself wondering if that's can't lie or can't deceive. And if you don't understand the difference, well, then you've never played D&D and argued about what a deception roll means. But it's as we literally just kind of mentioned with Tim, it is pretty easy to lie by telling the truth. That is to say, to deceive by telling the truth. It is also possible to lie in order to tell the truth, and in order to do that, there's actually more nuance than it. Yeah, slanting is a thing, blah 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 blah. And so I find myself wondering, the way just to get this off, the way we usually rule this in our campaigns, Third and I are both in agreement on this, is if your intent is to deceive, then that is a deception and requires a roll. And that's important because this literally came up last Thursday, by the way, so this is kind of fresh in my memory. I was saying something that was the truth, but was being done to deceive the person I was talking to. And someone else in the party pointed out, but you're not lying. I was like, no, but I'm deceiving. So I still got to roll, right? I've still got to do it. Boom. And I rolled, and my dice were on fire last Thursday, so that worked out well. So, but you get the idea. And so I find myself wondering how the Truth Talisman works, because again, there is more nuance to that than there probably should be. Intent to deceive is what a lie is in many ways, but I'm getting off topic. Anyways, so Rainbow, of course, is still hiding her spa ventures. Smile. That's actually going to be the only continuity counter I give to this episode. I know that sounds like a weird thing. Remember, the continuity counter is by design for the little fun pluses to story of continuity. What this episode is this is a freaking arc counter, which I'm pretty sure I haven't given yet, so we're going to go ahead and bump that up there. If I have, please feel free to correct me. I'm pretty sure I haven't given it yet. So, that's enough. I'm quitting being a hench pony and following my dreams of becoming an opera star. Get this thing off me. And then in my notes, I just write down, oh no. No. Yep. They try to portray Aizodal as sympathetic. Out of nowhere. Yes, it does. Well, in some of the comics, it does, Lord Paramount. This is the only part of the episode I don't like, by the way. So hang on. Before we jump into this is a retcon. This is 100% a retcon. I don't think there's any arguing that. The amount of mental gymnastics... I actually did a little research on this. The amount of mental gymnastics we'd have to do to make Aoizotle's previous appearances work here and still apply based on his statement are quite significant. You know, I talk about how many hoops you have to jump through. You have to jump through at least 3 or 4 hoops in order to make this make sense. This is a retcon. Now, here's the thing. Retcons are not good or bad. Retcons are retcons. They are a tool that can be used to good or ill. So the question here is not, is this a retcon? That's a duh. The question is this retcon a good retcon? Estinian was definitely retconned between ARR and Heavensward, but it was very much for the better. So do you think this actually makes Aoizotle better or worse as a character? That's the real question. And yeah, I'm torn on this. Because, yeah, I'm kind of with Imperial Star Destroyer on this. The world-building potential of the fact that there are not only guardian creatures, but that there's like a whole society of guardian creatures is interesting on many levels. The very idea that this is a job, that they have their own, like, club that they interact with and that they can be fired from. Like, there's a lot of implication and concepts that they will never take that through. But at the same time, it's at the end of the series. This kind of retcon would have worked a lot better way over here. You know? And then they could have done something with this. As a further addendum, I personally think this makes the character worse. I have nothing wrong with the one-dimensional, I'm here to kill you, mwahaha. I'm going to call... What was it? I forgot the number. Hang on. There it is. 800. 800 years of scorching heat to the basin. Right. Yep. I'm admittedly torn on this one because I simultaneously like and dislike this for completely different reasons. On the one hand, as Lord Haramont says, Aoizotle can fit within the pattern. And it does imply some really fascinating stuff from a world-building perspective. On the other hand, I feel it's completely unnecessary, not just for this episode, but in general, and it actively kind of goes really against the previously established concepts. This is, frankly, going to go ahead and get a counter-continuity counter, because this is so counter-continuity, it is actually a complete shift in personality. Again, 800 years. So... shrug. I will say this wouldn't be a massive negative. Like, imagine for a moment, if you will, that at this point in time, Rainbow suddenly just came out as being a puppy eater. No, that's terrible, but whatever, right? That would be a retcon that is just awful. Not just because it turns her evil, but because it's so extremely out of character for her. It is so out of character that it also ruins everything beforehand, right? By contrast, Aoizotle has been a minor character. This is what someone mentioned. Darth Medora mentioned right there. So this is a retcon, and it is a severe retcon, but at the same time, it doesn't really change that much. You have to keep in mind all the variables when it comes to how good or bad something like this is. This is something that's going to come up Tuesday when it comes to FF14, actually. So, shrug. And Aoizotle is now a writer. Wah, wah. And that's a total wah, wah. Smolder's brother was absolutely a retcon, yes. And unlike this one, was a very unnecessary retcon. I don't think there was anything positive about that retcon. We talked about that then, too. So, wah, wah counter goes up. And now we have to judge the episode. Something Ross mentioned earlier is something I find myself agreeing with. This is definitely another popcorn episode. It is a fairly good episode, and honestly, the only thing that makes me trip is right at the end with Howie Zodel. So I would say Orange is probably the floor for me personally, because it's got some good character moments, some great construction, surprisingly good foreshadowing if you're paying attention. It's smart in terms of how it's designed, and up until the Howie Zodel thing, I would say there's no real flaws in it either. But yeah, I don't think I could give this one a red. I certainly couldn't give this a violet or purple. So I guess I've just kind of talked myself into that, haven't I? Where's my... I have so many notes up right now. I always keep so much crap up when I'm doing all this. There we go. This is by Nicole. Is this one of Nicole's last ones? Hang on, what do we got here? Nope, she's got one more, the ending of the end. And we've got another Josh Haber coming up. We'll have our last Ed Valentine soon. We're getting there. We're getting there. Next week. Oh my goodness, what do we have next week? What do we got? So next week, so we will be doing 2 episodes next week. Growing Up is Hard to Do, and the Big Mac question, which I imagine will be about Big Mac. And 2 weeks from today, that will be the 27th, for a bit of perspective, we will cover Beginning of the End Part 1, Beginning of the End Part 2, and The Last Problem. And all 3 will be done that day. And that'll be the end of the Streaminations, and then I'm going to have to put together something. For those of you who've been paying attention to the spreadsheet, you may or may not have noticed I've already done some of the prep work on the finale, whatever I'm going to do there. I haven't decided exactly the format yet, because to be honest, I've been horrifically busy. But I do have the data. I'd have the colors per seasons, and I do have the episodes per people, and I've already got the format for that worked out. So I will be doing something. I'm just not sure if it's going to be a stream or a pre-recorded. I'm leaning towards stream because the whole Streamination has been a stream. So I can just show it off on camera that way, you know. That's probably what I'm going to do. I haven't decided yet 100% though, so we'll figure that out 3+ weeks from now. Either way, I'm exhausted because daylight savings time can go to hell, and I still need to go get groceries. So, see y'all Tuesday.